Hey folks, welcome to another Broken Meeple review. I'm Luke Hector and thanks for tuning in. Happy bunny right now. I just saw that the channel had got past its 1,000 subscriber limit. Just a quick note, thank you guys for that. I mean, it's still growing. I want to expand this channel. I want it to grow, but I can't do it without you guys giving me good feedback, giving me praise, where it's due, obviously. You don't just randomly give it, but, just supporting the channel, watching it, liking the content, having ideas for what you'd like to see, that kind of thing. Just thank you, alright? Because it means a lot to me and it makes everything worthwhile. Anyway, on with the show. I'm supposed to be talking about a game here. And yes, we have Keyper. And yeah, if you can hear all the noise, that's because there's a lot of stuff in there. It's full of bits, put it that way. Keyper is another game in that whole Key series that Richard Breese has been doing like crazy. I haven't played all of the Key games in the series, although I do own, I think, yeah, right behind me. In fact, I might just get it out because it's right there. I do own Keyflower, which, was an unexpected gem for me, actually. I thought, I'm not going to like this. This is just pushing, Euro pieces around. It's auction. Why would I want to do this? But this wowed me greatly. Once I was able to figure out how to play it, but we'll get onto that sort of thing later. But that, I enjoy it. I've got 2 expansions in here. In fact, I barely even remember how to play them because it's not often I can get this to the table, but it's a solid one. Keyflower. You should check it out. I think it was on my top 100. Keyper, though, is I would say, probably one of the more complex ones that I've seen from the Keepers, from like the whole Key series, but it's not too heavy. It's about a mid-weight Euro where, again, you are controlling different colour meeples, sending them out to spaces like worker placement style, getting resources and building up your own village. It's very much, kind of gives me a similar feel to how Caverna worked, where you had your player board in front of you and a mixture of farm and a mixture of cave, except in this case it's a mixture of farm and village, basically. And you sent your workers out and you got resources and you built up a nice little sort of scale village in front of you. I always like games like that where it feels like you've built something and you can see what you built. Keyflower actually had a similar premise with, building up your village, i.e. Carcassonne style, in a sense, where you had to connect the hexes and a map and you built your village and the expansions that you put animals and stuff. That sort of thing I really like. I want to see a visual representation of progression in the Euro game I'm playing. So with Keyper, let's start with, I'm in a good mood. Let's start with all the good things I can say about this game. And there's quite a few. Keyper involves a mechanic that it shares with Keyflower, and I don't know if it's shared with the other ones. I mean, there's Keyfeedral, was that another one? I don't know if it's shared between all of them. But these two, specifically, I've got this thing where you use different colour meeples and they're not always yours. And you'll get different ones each turn. In Keyflower, if you sent your meeples to a particular building or a particular village, the opponent got those meeples. And the meeples didn't do anything specific, it was just red, yellow and blue, I believe. And you just used them as an auction currency and as workers. With Keyper, you've got about 8 different colour meeples. And each one is a specialist in a particular field. Now, they don't have special abilities, but basically when you place them out on these field boards, which have all the spaces, depending on what colour the meeple is, whether it's a wild white meeple or one of the specific colours, will dictate whether you get bonus resources or actions for doing so. So when you've got, at the start, one of each and a couple of wilds, you've got a variety of things you can do. But this is probably my favourite mechanic of this whole game. As soon as you put a meeple out, forget the fact you own it, because you don't anymore. As soon as it's out on a field board, at some point during a round, somebody has to claim that board. And as soon as that happens, then they're going to get all the meeples on that board once they're done. I just love that sort of thing, because that means you claim a board and you get a different set of meeples. And you might start it off with one of each colour, but now suddenly you've got 3 green. So you're really good at farming actions, but you suck at like using the boats or anything because you didn't pick up any blues. And every round, the colour meeples will change and you'll base your decision on which board you're going to claim, because you've got to claim one of them. And the longer you leave it, the less likely you're going to get a board for the meeples that you actually want. But of course, you do it too early, then people will start avoiding your tile and placing them on ones where they think they're going to get more. So there's a really tough balance. But again, the meeples that are on each board will dictate whether you want the board or not. On top of that, when you do claim the board, it's mental. I have seen people light up like a Christmas tree when I talk about these things or when I show them it. You have to fold the board, and do you remember when you were at school and there was like those wizards that you knew who basically had those things made out of paper, and it was kind of like pick a colour, blue, B-L-U-E, now pick a number, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They had this like really fold origami thing that apparently could tell the future and predict who you were or something, all those lame things that people complained about them. But, people made those. And these boards are like that. They fold every which way but loose, up, down, left, right, backwards, whatever. And there's a restriction on what you have to set up each round. But apart from that, the world is your oyster with just basically folding these things inside out. And at first, you play it and you think it only goes about 4 ways. And then you discover, wait a minute, it does this as well? And suddenly there's all sorts of different combinations of how you can construct those field boards. Of course, this does lead to a slight problem of analysis paralysis for some people because they take too long trying to figure out which board they want. When all's said and done, a lot of the time it doesn't really matter. I mean, oh yeah, you might want to say put a lot of actions you're going to use or deny your opponent's actions you know they will use. That's about all you really need to think about. But if you start sitting there for ages going, I want that particular field, but that, and then fold this one. Oh, I can't get that. Oh, I should have at least 2 of those, 1 of those. You sit there doing that, then go play another game. But, it doesn't need that much thought. But you can't just sort of go, there's a board, because, you might inadvertently mess yourself up or give your opponents too much options on their turn. The whole placing of stuff on your board, building up tiles in a certain way to get points, as well as building up farm animals and various other things like jewels and resources, that's all well and good. It's very much in the same vein as how Keyflower worked. They don't really do different things, you just notice that the buildings and the animal requirements are different. One tile might only allow you to keep sheep, whereas one might only allow you to keep chickens. And I've got to admit, it gets to a point with just having chicken meeples. Does any other game have chicken meeples? I'm not aware of one. Please let me know in the comments if there is. But chicken meeples. I've never seen chickens represented as a meeple in a board game. I just think that's amazing. We need more farm games with chicken meeples in them. Seriously, Uri Rosenberg, get on this, alright? With your next, inevitably your next resource management game. You always make them. So, it's a very neat set of mechanics. You've got plenty of options of how you want to play the game and how you want to score points. Do you build up a load of farm tiles? Do you build up a load of village tiles? Does the orientation get you points? Are you going to get the ones that mean stack up a bunch of resources and get points? Although they are capped, so you can't munchkin those too much. Are you going to use the fairs, which are essentially end of round bonuses you can get for the end of the game? Are you going to use the boats for points? Are you going to sell lots of goods each round and get money that way? There's a lot of different options you've got, and it leads to a good variety of strategy. Something I really like in a lot of Euros. If you can give me a variety of options that don't feel like one's too much more powerful than the other. So far I haven't noticed a particular game-winning strategy being dominant over others, and that's a good thing. Other than that though, the options that you have aren't terribly different. It's not like you have to go a completely different path in order to do a particular option, but at least you don't feel like if you started off not being able to do what you wanted to do, you're not necessarily penalised for the rest of the game. You can easily, quickly migrate onto a different strategy and build yourself up from there. So it's not like you're kind of out of the running. I haven't noticed a pseudo knockout formula with this, particularly as a lot of the points aren't scored until the end anyway. So you're not necessarily in a position where you can easily tell who's going to be the winner of the game. Always a good thing with Euros. Production quality, pretty solid. The artwork is exactly the same as the typical Keep, I mean, you only have to look at the box, the box art is exactly the same. As far as I'm aware, Cathedral might even be similar. It is the same art, it's the same style. If you like one, you like the other. But at least with Keyper, you've also got, like I say, you've got the fold-out boards, you've got wooden cylinders for resources. I wish they were actual tokens, but, well, can't be helped. But, and a few cubes, cubes and cylinders, we've got animal meeples. Could we have not just put normal resource tokens? I mean, it's no big deal. I've got the Stonemaier treasure chests up there and stuff, so I could always, substitute those tokens. And in fact, oh yeah, I'm going to do that idea. But yeah, so it is pretty sound quality and the artwork is decent. You know, we're not talking stellar, but it's nice, colourful, looks striking on the table. People have come by and sort of gone, ooh, what's this one? Thinking it's Keyflower. They do get muddled up at times, you know, it's that similar an art style. But when you play this game, it is definitely a lot more different than Keyflower, particularly in the fact that the meeples have more relevance to them than in Keyflower did. They were more used as a kind of currency back then. This time they actually have a reason why you want to send a particular colour out to a space. The game plays between 2 to 4 players and scales reasonably well at that. You have to go in turn order so it's not entirely simultaneous, so a little bit of analysis paralysis can hurt this a bit with 4 players, but when people are familiar with the game, you should be able to wrap this up in about a couple of hours, maybe a little bit more for your first game. Well, we'll get onto this. It's coming. Our rant is coming. But for 2 players, it's very speedy, very quick. 60 minutes is doable. I played a 3-player game of this, and it took a couple of hours. We were still learning the game. Really learning the game. Bide my time. But with 3 players, yeah, you should be able to do it in about 90 minutes. About half an hour per player is about reasonable for this game. 2.5 hours is about the maximum it should take you. And even then, that's probably your first game, or with slow players with 4. Other than that, it should actually be kept to a decent game length. This one doesn't outstay its welcome, and I respect it for that. Too many Euros these days are trying to be 3-hour plus monstrosities, and it's nice to see that there's some Euros that still like to just keep the time length down a bit. You know, when I finish playing this on a typical 4-hour game night, I want to play another similar Euro game and still be able to fit it in. Okay? Seriously? Is that too much to ask? So I have said a lot of good things about this game, and it wasn't far off my top 10 of 2017. It didn't quite make it. It got to about where I didn't really go beyond 10, but I would estimate this would be between 10 and 15. So maybe 13, 14, something like that, if you want to put a rough guess on it. I still think it was really solid. Why did it not meet the top 10 though? Well, there were other games that were just better than it. I mean, I can only fit so many on the top 10. But there was another reason. Another core, major reason why this did not hit the top 10. This is a rulebook. This is the rulebook for Keyper. It's not many pages, but there's a fair few. I swear War and Peace does not have as much text as this does. There is a ton of text in here. There's pictorial examples, but it's hard to tell exactly what they're referring to. And even then, there's only so many. I mean, that is a wall. I don't know if you can see it with the camera light, but that is just a wall of text with a couple of small pictures on it. And on top of that, I'll just get out and say it. This is one of, I'm sorry to get on this, but this is one of the worst rulebooks I have ever seen. This almost destroyed me wanting to continue to play this game, and if I had, I would have lost out on playing what is a decent Euro game. Rulebooks mean a lot to me. I have to learn a ton of games. I have to teach them, and there is nothing more frustrating when playing a board game than when a rulebook is unclear about how to play the game. In this, pretty much the best thing in it is the setup diagram. It does give you a full setup diagram with numbered parts on where to put things and so on and so forth. It's not 100% clear, but it's fine, and I was able to set the game up fine on my first go. But oh my word, if you are not familiar with all the rules in this game, if you try to reference anything in this book, it is a chore. It is an absolute chore. Things are laid out all over the place. It sort of finishes talking about the game after a few pages, then suddenly skips to, you know, the country boards in more detail and buildings in more detail, but it keeps mentioning rules that it should have explained further behind in the book. The whole sequence is just completely illogical when reading the rulebook, and even then, everything is text, text, text. We need more picture examples with books. People learn a lot by visual representation. I know I certainly do. Granted, not everyone does. Everybody learns differently. But I'm more of a pictorial representation kind of guy, not a wall of text. I've studied enough accountancy books in order to deal with walls of text. But then on top of that, I mean, some of the things... I'm sorry if you can't see this sort of light. Let's see if I can get that on there. But basically what you were seeing there is a giant kind of diagram of what basically happens with any combination of meeples that you put down, whether it's one meeple, two meeples, or join meeples, whatever. On any type of board, with any type of meeple, what's available, the lot. I like the fact it says players do not need to absorb this table before playing the game. Well, good, because I can't think of anybody who could. What is the point of putting this in there? It is just far too complex and convoluted for anybody's guess. It's just a horrible rulebook. The amount of rules we got wrong on our first game was staggering. I mean, it didn't affect my enjoyment, apart from the fact that I had to constantly keep looking up a rulebook, but we still enjoyed it. But I had to do some serious corrections for the next few games. I'm like, oh right, we didn't do that right, so we must do that. We must do this, must do that. Oh my god, this is one of those games where the rulebook almost destroys it. Now granted, there are people putting out videos for this. I mean, I hate to plug, but Paul Grogan's done one recently. I know other people on YouTube have done Keyper rules videos. I strongly recommend, in fact, I say it's mandatory that you go online and watch one of those videos. Watch any of them, support anybody online. But seriously, you have got to watch a rules video with this, because if you try and do it just from the rule book, I almost guarantee you are going to get something wrong. I mean, what did we get wrong? I think we got the whole being able to join meeples with the white colours. We got that wrong. I didn't understand how fair tiles worked. You flip them, but do you score now? Do they come at the end? Can you take the resources off? It was completely unclear. The boards themselves, it was just an absolute chore. Now, I've got to grips with the game now, but that's because I've had to do research on rules videos galore, as well as study this, like an exam, and play the game multiple times before I feel like, right, I'm confident enough that I feel I could teach this game. But even then, for all I know, I'm still getting the rule wrong in this, and I haven't even realised it. That's how convoluted this rulebook is. I am sorry, but this is not how you do a rulebook. I've already mentioned this a lot of times. I've got a game on my shelf there called Manhattan Project Energy Empire. This was a solid 2016 game. And that is one of the best rulebooks I've ever seen. It is logically written. It's got a great setup diagram, easy to follow. It's got pictorial diagrams for all the major points. It's laid out in the right order. It's not just a wall of text. It is a brilliant rulebook. I thought I was going to have such a problem learning it, and as soon as I was setting it up and doing a playthrough to learn the rules, I was like, wow, I've already got this game. It's only been like 2 turns. I'm good. I'll pack this away and I'll teach it later. And I did. No problems. That's an example of a great rulebook. This is not. This is a rulebook. In comparison to something like Manhattan Project Energy Empire, this rulebook is garbage. Absolute garbage. But I've ranted on about the book enough. The game in general is solid. Thankfully, if you can conquer this hurdle with the bad rulebook, it's worth it because this game is solid. I really do enjoy it. I like the fold-out boards. They're a bit gimmicky, but it's fun. It's different. I find it innovative from a Euro game perspective. I like this sort of worker placement aspect where you're putting guys out, getting the resources, and building something in front of you. When I've built it, I've got my fairs, I've got my animals, I've got my village tiles. I might have been a jeweler one game, a sailor another, a mass farmer in the next one. I might have just literally gone for no farm and all village. Whatever happens, I've done that. I chose my path. The game doesn't feel like it played me. I played the game. Now granted, you have to adapt to what tiles come out of the bag and what other players do, but that's more from a strategic aspect of the meeples, rather than what strategy am I gunning for. Because people can try and stop you getting certain resources and stuff like that, but there's only so much they can stop you. What matters more though is the fact that if they deny you the meeples you need to really make your strategy work, that's going to hinder you. But then you're doing it to them as well. And that whole aspect of exchanging the meeples between players, like as soon as you get rid of the worker, it's no longer yours. I really like that as a concept, and I've only really seen that in these key-themed games. I'll have to try Cathedral at some point if it's similar concept. If it's not, maybe I'll give it a pass, but I'd like to at least maybe try it. Certainly, Keyflower has wowed me. This one has wowed me. if there's any other game, I'm not just talking about like Richard Breese's games, if any other Euro wants to try this whole, meeples are no longer yours and you get different exchange, different ownership exchanges, then I want to try more of those games. That's pretty sweet. So, all in all, Keyper is still sound. I know I ranted about the book, but it's great. Personally, I still think rating-wise, I've given it an 8. It's solid. It's really good. I enjoy playing this. I wish though that rulebook was just so much easier to wait. I hate even looking at it. I almost want to chuck it away. It's that bad. But obviously I'm going to need something to reference to. But I'm going to be downloading BGG files off the internet, whatever. Anything that I can find to make this easier to learn and teach, I'll do it. But once you do, great Euro. Definitely, I would say definitely worth that initial slog. And I don't often say that about games with terrible rulebooks. Most terrible rulebooks kind of, you get through them and it's like, and the game wasn't even worth it. That is a real killer. This one is. So, overall, 8 out of 10 for me. Keyper, solid game, worth trying. Just hope you like reading text. So that's it for me, and regardless of whether this sends you completely round the bend, just remember that this is only a book, this is only a game. Just have fun with it at the end of the day. Take care, guys. See you on the next Broken Meeple review.